My friends, I want you to hear me today. I don't believe you're here by accident. I believe this moment was orchestrated by God to unlock something in your spirit, because there are times in life when God shakes things up, not to harm you, but to shift you. Sometimes He will pull you away from what is familiar, from what is comfortable, even from those you love, because He has something greater in store for you. And I know what some of you are thinking, but they are my family. Why would God separate me from them? Let me tell you something. You cannot fulfill divine destiny if you refuse to leave the place of comfort. The greatest enemy of your future is not your past. It is your attachment to things that no longer serve your destiny. Look at Abraham. God told him, "Leave your father's house and go to a land I will show you." Why? Because where he was could not sustain what God was about to do in his life. Some of you are struggling right now because God is calling you into a new place, but you are still holding on to old people, old environments, old mindsets. And God is saying, "I'm calling you higher, but you're still trying to stay lower." So how do you know when God is separating you for a bigger purpose? There are signs, clear signs that God is shifting your position. And today I want to share 6 of them with you. First, God will start to disturb your peace where you are. You used to feel comfortable, used to feel at home, but now something in your spirit is unsettled. Conversations that used to excite you don't excite you anymore. The environment you once thrived in now drains you. That is God disrupting your spirit, because God never allows you to feel at home in a place that is no longer your home. He will remove your peace to push you into your purpose. Second, relationships begin to change. People you used to be close to start acting differently. They misunderstand you. They question your decisions. They may even attack you. But let me tell you something. When God is shifting you, He will allow some people to exit your life. Stop chasing people. God is trying to remove. Stop trying to hold on to relationships that can't handle where God is taking you. Everybody who started with you cannot go with you. Some people are seasonal. And when their season is over, you have to let them go. Third, opportunities that once made sense no longer align with your spirit. You used to have dreams that matched the people around you. You used to agree with their vision, but now something has changed. You see things differently. The things that used to satisfy you don't satisfy you anymore. You feel pulled towards something greater, something deeper, something beyond what your family can understand. And they may not support you, they may not get it, but that's okay, because they were never meant to carry the weight of your calling. The fourth sign. God begins to give you new desires. Suddenly you have a passion for things you never thought about before. You have ideas that don't match your environment. You wake up thinking about something that no one around you is thinking about. That's God pulling you into your future. And the problem is, you are trying to explain your vision to people who don't have the capacity to see it. Stop expecting people to understand what God is showing you. When God calls you higher, He doesn't need a committee's approval. He just needs your obedience. Fifth, doors begin to close. And I know we don't like this part. We cry, we complain, we ask God why. But hear me today. Closed doors are a blessing. When God closes a door, it means He is redirecting you. If you are being rejected, if you are being denied, if things are no longer working the way they used to, it's not because God is punishing you, it's because He's protecting you. There are places your family may be comfortable in, but you cannot stay there because your assignment is different. And the last sign, God starts preparing you for elevation. Listen, separation always comes before elevation. You cannot go to the next level while holding on to the last one. Before God promotes you, He prunes you. He removes things that are not beneficial for where you are going. That's why some of you feel like everything is being stripped away. That's why you feel like people are leaving, like you are walking alone. But you are not alone. You are just being prepared. You are in transition, and transition is uncomfortable but necessary. So my question to you today is this: are you willing to let go? Are you willing to trust God even when it doesn't make sense? Are you willing to release what is familiar so you can walk into what is divine? Because if you hold on to what's comfortable, you will miss what's possible. God is calling you out. He is separating you, not to hurt you, but to position you. You were never meant to stay where you started. Your destiny is greater, your assignment is bigger, your purpose is waiting. Let go, and let God lead you to your next level. And some of you are feeling the weight of this transition. You feel the tension between where you've been and where you're going. It feels like you're being stretched, pulled in different directions, and you don't understand why. But listen to me. This is not a sign of your destruction. It is a sign of your development. Because before God places you in a new environment, He has to take the old environment out of you. This is why the process is painful. This is why you feel like you don't fit in anymore. Because God is stripping away the things that no longer align with your future. He is refining your character, your mindset, your spirit. He is breaking attachments that were never meant to last. He is disconnecting you from people who are no longer part of your destiny. And if you are not careful, you will misinterpret separation as rejection. But rejection is often God's protection. Some of you are crying over relationships that ended, doors that shut, people who walked away. But if you could see what God sees, you would be thanking Him instead of questioning Him. Because not everyone around you has your best interest at heart. Not everyone connected to you is for you. Some people are only there because of what they can get from you. Some people are only there because of convenience. And God will allow them to walk away so that they don't contaminate the next season of your life. Think about Joseph. He had to be separated from his family so he could step into his purpose. His own brothers betrayed him, sold him, left him for dead. But what they meant for evil, God meant for good. Because had Joseph stayed where he was, he would have never become what God destined him to be. Some of you are in that place right now. You feel like you've been abandoned, forgotten, left behind. But what if I told you that you're not being left behind? You're being positioned. What if I told you that this is not the end, it is the beginning? What if I told you that everything you are going through right now is preparing you for what is coming? God is calling you out of familiarity. He is calling you out of comfort. He is calling you to something greater. But you cannot hold on to the past and step into the future at the same time. You have to make a decision. Will you trust God even when you don't understand? Will you walk by faith even when it doesn't make sense? Will you let go of what is good so you can receive what is greater? Because the truth is, you cannot take everyone with you. Your purpose requires separation. Your destiny requires elevation. And the higher God takes you, the smaller your circle will become. The higher you go, the more refined your connections must be, because not everyone can handle the weight of your calling. Some people will try to keep you where they are, because they are afraid of what you will become without them. But you cannot let fear hold you back. God is stretching you because He is preparing you. He is stripping things away because He is making room for more. He is shifting your relationships because He is aligning you with divine connections. And if you can endure the process, if you can trust Him in the transition, you will see that everything is working together for your good. So don't resist the shift. Don't fight the separation. Don't try to hold on to something. God is calling you to release, because what's ahead of you is greater than what's behind you. And if you let go, if you trust Him, if you step out in faith, you will walk into a season of overflow, a season of divine favor, a season where everything God promised you will come to pass. And that is why you must be careful not to let emotions drive your decisions in this season. When God is shifting you, your feelings will try to convince you to stay where it's comfortable. Your heart will remind you of the memories, the love, the connection, but your spirit will sense the misalignment. And in that moment, you will have to decide, will you follow your emotions or will you follow God? Because your emotions will deceive you, but God will always lead you into truth. Some of you are in a season where you're trying to explain yourself to people who will never understand. You're trying to convince your family of what God is doing in your life, but they can't see it. And let me tell you something. Stop trying to get people to validate what God has already confirmed. Some of them will never see it because God didn't show it to them. He showed it to you. And when God gives you a vision, He doesn't require the approval of those around you. He only requires your obedience. Look at Jesus. When He began His ministry, even His own brothers didn't believe in Him. The people in His hometown rejected Him. They couldn't understand how someone they grew up with could be anointed for something greater. And some of you are in that same position. Your family sees you the way you used to be, not the way God is shaping you to become. But just because they don't recognize your calling doesn't mean you are not called. Just because they don't affirm your purpose doesn't mean God hasn't assigned you. And this is where many people miss it. They allow the opinions of others to hold them hostage to an old version of themselves. They shrink back because they don't want to disappoint their family. They stay small because they don't want to stand out. But hear me today. God didn't call you to fit in. He called you to stand out. He didn't call you to be comfortable. He called you to be impactful. And impact requires separation. Think about Moses. He had to leave Egypt before he could lead Israel. He had to be separated from the palace before he could walk in his true assignment. God took him into the wilderness, stripped away everything he knew, and only after that was he ready for his purpose. Some of you are in that wilderness season right now. You're wondering why everything is shifting, why you feel so alone, why nothing is the same. But that is the place where God is molding you. That is the place where God is preparing you. And preparation is not glamorous. It doesn't feel good. But it is necessary. Because if God placed you in your destiny before you were ready, you would not be able to handle it. That is why He separates you, because He is pruning you. He is refining your character. He is teaching you how to depend on Him alone. And when the time comes, you will look back and realize that everything you lost was necessary for everything you are about to gain. So stop trying to go back to what God is calling you out of. Stop trying to repair what God is allowing to be removed. Stop questioning the process and start trusting the purpose. Because the people who are meant to walk with you will recognize your assignment. The relationships that are aligned with your destiny will strengthen you, not limit you. And what God has ahead of you is so much greater than anything you're leaving behind. You have to make peace with the fact that not everyone will understand your journey. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people will try to guilt-trip you for moving forward. Some will accuse you of thinking you're better than them. Some will try to manipulate you into staying in a place that no longer fits you. But you must recognize that your loyalty should never be to a place, a person, or a season. Your loyalty should be to your prayer. And when you prioritize your purpose, God will begin to open doors that no man can shut. He will begin to send the right people, the right opportunities, the right resources, and you will begin to walk in the fullness of what He has for you. But first, you have to be willing to let go. You have to be willing to trust that separation is not punishment, it is preparation. You have to be willing to step out in faith, even when you can't see the whole picture, because what God is doing in you is bigger than where you've been. What He is preparing you for requires a new environment, a new mindset, a new level of faith. And when you finally embrace the shift, when you finally surrender to the process, you will step into something so much greater than you ever imagined. And that is the challenge many people face. They resist the shift because they fear the unknown. They want clarity before they move. They want to see the whole staircase before they take the first step. But faith does not work like that. Faith demands that you step out even when you don't know what's next. Faith requires that you trust God even when the path is unclear. And sometimes faith requires that you walk alone. Some of you have been holding on to relationships that are limiting you because you are afraid of loneliness. But let me tell you something. Just because you are alone doesn't mean you are abandoned. Just because people leave doesn't mean God has left you. In fact, some of your greatest moments of growth will happen in isolation. Some of your deepest revelations will come when it's just you and God. Because when the noise of the crowd fades away, you can finally hear His voice clearly. Think about Elijah. After his greatest victory, he found himself alone in the wilderness. He felt like he had no one left, like he was forgotten. But in that place of isolation, God spoke to him in a still, small voice. God reminded him that He was still in control, that the plan was still in motion. And some of you need that reminder today. Just because you don't see progress doesn't mean God isn't working. Just because things look quiet doesn't mean God isn't moving behind the scenes. And this is where many people fail the test. They mistake the silence for inactivity. They think that because nothing seems to be happening, they must have missed God. But listen, before every major shift, there is always a season of stillness. Before Jesus stepped into His ministry, He spent 40 days alone in the wilderness. Before Paul became the great apostle, he spent years in obscurity, being prepared. And before Joseph ruled in the palace, he was alone in a prison. So don't despise this season of separation. Don't rush the process, because what God is doing in you right now is building the foundation for where He's taking you. He is developing your character. He is stretching your faith. He is making sure that when you step into your destiny, you are ready to carry the weight of it. Because let me tell you, elevation comes with responsibility, promotion comes with pressure, and if you step into it unprepared, the very thing you prayed for could crush you. That is why God separates before He elevates. That is why He prunes before He promotes. Because He loves you too much to let you step into something that your character cannot sustain. And some of you need to change your perspective about what you're going through. Stop seeing it as rejection and start seeing it as refinement. Stop seeing it as a loss and start seeing it as preparation. Because when the time is right, when you have been fully processed, when you have learned what God needs you to learn, the doors will open, the opportunities will come, the connections will align, and you will step into something that is not just good, but something that is God-ordained. But hear me, when that moment comes, you cannot hesitate. You cannot shrink back. You cannot try to bring people with you who were never meant to go, because if you try to hold on to what God told you to release, you will delay your destiny. If you try to fit old relationships into your new season, you will find yourself stuck between where you've been and where God is calling you. And that is a dangerous place to be, because you cannot move forward while still looking backward. That is why Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt. She couldn't let go of where she came from. She looked back when God was calling her forward. And I wonder, how many of you are stuck because you're still looking back? How many of you are delaying your breakthrough because you are still tied to the past? How many of you are missing what God has for you because you refuse to release what is familiar? Because let me tell you something, what is ahead of you is greater than what is behind you. What God is calling you to is so much bigger than what you're leaving behind. But you have to trust Him enough to take the next step. You have to believe that if He is separating you, it is because He is preparing you. And if He is preparing you, it is because He is getting ready to launch you into something that will not just change your life, but the lives of everyone connected to you. So today, I challenge you. Make the decision to trust God's process. Stop fighting the separation. Stop clinging to what is no longer serving your purpose. Stop looking back when God is calling you forward, because the longer you delay, the longer you postpone the promise. Listen, God never separates without a purpose. He never removes without a reason. He is not taking things away from you. He is making room for something greater. And if you can endure the process, if you can surrender to the shift, if you can trust that what He is doing is for your good, you will step into a destiny so powerful, so impactful, so life-changing, that you will look back and thank God for every closed door, for every lost relationship, for every moment of separation, because you will see that it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. It wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. It wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something greater. So walk boldly into your future. Let go of what no longer fits. Embrace the shift, and when God calls you higher, don't hesitate, rise, because your destiny is waiting.